what, in your view, would be the best organization in implementing theatre commands in India? And you touched upon a very valid point of where do the chiefs stand? Do we add another layer? So how exactly do we come about on this? So I mean, maybe I have Vice Admiral Shekhar Sinha, sir, since you are also CISC, you've studied it at that level also, you've looked at it at that, and then you've been a CNC of a Western Naval Command. Can you give us your opinion on this?
Volume.
So we can't hear you, sir.
Sir, you muted yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Strength 5, sir.
Yeah, sorry, my fault. I said it's a little tough question to address it and get it right the first time. But I recall when we first moved this file and we made a proposal, and with great difficulty, the three chiefs said yes. And then we went across to the National Security Advisor that yes, it is on. He was quite surprised. It was the first time three chiefs were agreeing to something. Our bigger problem had been internal rather than external, to be very honest. So my sense is that what was seen at that time by all three service chiefs, that their role primarily as far as services are concerned will be to recruit, train, and support. Okay, so these three things, just like on the American model, or maybe to some extent the British model. Then somebody said, what happens to the operational role of the three chiefs? So the answer to that, which was given by us in the presentation, was at that time that the CDS is the chairman of the Chiefs of Staff Committee. And none of these big decisions are going to be taken by CDS all by himself. So his group of advisors is going to be the three chiefs. And therefore, they're very much clutched in with the operational issues. So the theatre commanders, while they are fighting a war, the orders are going from the CDS. And let us not forget that it has the concurrence of the Chiefs of Staff Committee as far as operations are concerned. So I think it was by and large broadly accepted at that time. I don't know if there has been any change. I have not been associated anymore after 4 or 5 years after leaving the Navy. And I think that there is nothing wrong in this. If you really have to use the theaterization and integration, like General Rajeshwar mentioned, somebody, to be very honest, even now, the chiefs of each service do not have an operational role. It is okay that they pass a broad directive. The wars are to be fought by the commanders-in-chief, the army commanders. All the operational powers are with the army commander equivalents, right? Deployment, which is to go, it's a different issue. That air headquarters says, aise kar lo, or naval headquarters says, why don't you do this? But the commanders-in-chief are well within their rights to do the national war book. Very clearly lays down the duties of the commanders-in-chief. So I would say that, from that point of view, I'm sure all the chiefs are very familiar with this. I would say that there's nothing wrong in what has been thought. Let us put this in place. And as General Rajeshwar said, that as we go along, if there is a need to tweak it, retweak it, refine it, we'll do it. You may not get it right the first time. But the model which is being thought and the model which is being implemented, which should be implemented, we should not start deviating at this stage. It is too late. Like you said, it should have been done yesterday. It should be done. We should start moving in that direction. And as we face any hurdle, I am sure the generations which are ahead of us, after us, they will surely take all these factors into account. We are not the wisest people in the world. There are wiser people who will, but technology is changing. Many things will happen ashore, like naval warfare cannot fought at sea alone. We require whole of government approach. We require whole of three services approach. You mentioned about some of these artificial intelligence. You mentioned about cyber. You mentioned about so many other things. Space. All these will be used as elements of supporting the entire three services, and therefore most of these battles will be planned in a manner where the chiefs of three services will very much be involved. And these commands will be a separate command directly under CDS. Cyber, special forces, and what have you, and the intelligence. So I think that I would say that the present model and the present setup, what is the status of the three chiefs, is what I feel.
Thank you, sir. Very well put across, sir. Very well put across. You saying that we should, it's a model that needs to be implemented. Mayor General Pannu, sir, can I have your opinion on this, sir?
I think the challenge is to speak about a very complicated process in a simplest manner. I think that is the challenge. When you're talking about theaterization, we initially start thinking about the three services, the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. And when we say that we have to deal with the problems, we are talking about the land border problems and the maritime problems. Of course, there is the aerospace challenge, which is a separate dimension altogether, in which neither the land nor the maritime domain operators won't really understand. So therefore, each service has a huge responsibility towards safeguarding the territorial integrity, which is 360 degrees. It is not only the land, not only the maritime frontier, but also the space and the aerospace, which is open skies, and the threats are the way they are. In simple terms, the Navy cannot go into the mountains, but Navy will have some amount of leverage in the ocean if you have to fight the northern adversary.
Yes.
So therefore, there will be challenges that if mountains we are under pressure, I think Navy is most suitable to counter it in a binary terms to do something in the ocean. And in ocean, if we have a problem, then it is the land border forces which can counter it by creating an impact on the land border so that the pressure is released on the Navy. So that is the relationship between the land forces and the naval forces. Neither can land forces fight in the ocean, nor can the naval forces fight on the land. So therefore, there is no point when we talk about a theater that naval officer will ever get posted onto any force which is used or applied to fight on the land, and vice versa. The Air Force can go both ways. I think what we need to look at is that the future challenges are in executing a multi-domain operation. And multi-domain operation, obviously when I talk about the historical boundary problems and we are going to fight land borders and it will be border wars, certainly it will be there. But I think the way the adversaries are using technology, and world over, there is a geopolitics of technology. And the geopolitics of technology will impact on how we organize ourselves to fight. Now, in simplistic terms, that if we are attacked on any land border, the first responder today is the border guarding force, either the BSF or the ITBP or so on and so forth. I think the first layer itself is not fully jointed or integrated.
No, but good point you brought out, sir. But the Kargil Review Committee covered this point.
Yes.
And they said there's lack of coordination between the defense forces and the civilian authorities.
Yes. So, the moment you have the first shot fired, the first casualty is our policy. We will not cross the LC, we will not cross the LSE, we are not the ones which are going to fire first. It means we will have to face the brunt first time, we will have to have a casualty, only then we will react, so we become reactive in nature. Even in Galwan, we were reactive in nature. In Kargil, we were reactive in nature. In Somdrongchu, we were reactive in nature. In whatever is happening today in the eastern Ladakh, we are reactive in nature. So when our geopolitics, when we start talking about, and we have our international border which says that the Pakistan occupied Kashmir belongs to India, the Aksai Chin belongs to India, the McMahon line is the line which describes the Indian Indo-Tibetan border, and yet we don't have Somdrongchu. So as a result, how we are going to break away from the history and not fight the last war is a question mark. Because invariably we will land up with because the agenda of the last wars has not been settled. The fault lines are still there. So we have to, in one way or the other, look at fighting the last war. However, what has changed is the technology. How we organize ourselves to fight. So multi-domain operations will have to have Army, Navy, of course, at the baseline of it. Then we have the cyber, then we have the space, and we have paramilitary forces. And largely, the stand of warfare is going to be fought by the industry. And if the industry is not integrated into our system of defense, we don't have a military defense industrial complex. We are going to have a problem because they will never understand what to manufacture you. It is not one day you get up and put a RFI and RFP and expect the industry to should have already produced something better than what you're expecting. Industry doesn't know it. So first layer is that I think we need to organize ourselves well. So now you spoke about the 1999, where we fought a Kargil war, and then there was a Kargil review committee happened, and the group of ministers and all that they spoke. They at that time were talking about the CDS. The way the CDS was deliberated upon, was over-deliberated upon, I think bureaucracy had one equivalence issue with that. Yes. Now, when bureaucracy is preventing a post of a CDS to be created because the bureaucratic dominance that they want, the civilian control over the military, causes one big problem. In theaterization, you're talking about theaterization. I'm talking about you don't even have jointness. Then headquarter IDS gets created. Was headquarter IDS ever be made to function the way it was designed to function? No. The three services did not shed any manpower because now there was a headquarter which was to integrate them together. So matching savings were supposed to be given where the service headquarters is supposed to reduce their manpower and large manpower was supposed to come to headquarter IDS, and that is how the restructuring was to happen. It did not happen. Ultimately, now the CDS has come up because of a political decision. Because it is a political decision, so the bureaucratic friction was thrown out. Today, the CDS and the IDS are not integrated. So the point is that there are complexions which need to be spoken at different levels at different times, and not how many squadrons will support and how we are going to fight, whether the Air Force is going to be broken into number of theatres or not, because that is exactly what the whole issue is, where we have X number of squadrons and we have Y number of theatres. The Navy cannot move any ship anywhere, the Army cannot move our forces anywhere, so all that is required to be done is split the Air Force in a way that they can fight operations. Rest nothing will change. But the major challenge is, will the Air Force talk to the Army? Will the cyber security be there? Will our data centers be protected? Will we have a common ISR? We did not have any ISR during Kargil operation. We did not have it. Did we have that during Galwan operations? Question is no. The Kargil operations to Galwan operations are almost 20 years, 2 decades. So when we talk about having brought in the intelligence agencies post-Kargil, did those intelligence agencies over 20 years become any better? I can't comment on it. If they were better, then we wouldn't have been surprised. Even if we get an information that the adversary is going to attack you, are you going to take a preemptive action? Are bureaucracy and political masters completely on top of a situation to say, there is a threat building up, before it hits me, let me do something and take a proactive action? We're talking about the air campaign. Yes, the decision has to be taken whether you want to run the air campaign or not. Yes, in defensive way you can run an air campaign, but in offensive way, I think the authorities will have to work out very, very different models. So therefore, the technology which is being built up over a period of time with the Navy, the Air Force and the Army, we have separate silos which have come up over a period of time, where one technological model is not integrated or joined to the another technological model, so there is a problem. The space agency, the cyber agency, the special forces have come up. Have they been put to better use? Have these three actually integrated the land and the air and the marine components together? No. The Navy has their own way of looking at cyber, the Air Force has its own way of, because we don't have the same data centers and larger protection, we don't have a cyber shield. We have to have a cyber shield over our cyber, our ICT networks, our space networks, our tactical battle areas, which are supposed to be digital in nature. So, really speaking, when the CDS comes up, which is there, I think the main role is to get the capability of jointness to integration, and once the technological integration happens, once the doctrines are in place, once the exercises are done, once those number of training activities are proven, we have active borders. We can't afford to just experiment that, okay, let's fight a war together. If we don't succeed, then enough time to mend ourselves. That's not, this active border situation does not allow us to experiment. We have to mature our minds through exercises which are digital in nature. The ground configuration has to come together. How many exercises have happened? I am not privy to it. I hope they're happening. The next thing is that the flexibility. I think somewhere somebody spoke about the nimble way of working. Because of one platform on which you work, and you can integrate better and you can be flexible enough to do things on one platform put together, only then can you be nimble. You can't be nimble in mind unless you have the complete situational awareness and you can react to the same situational awareness with same amount of time and space. So therefore, technology aggregation between three services and the paramilitary forces and the cyber, the space, and the cyber space and industry has to come in a very big way. So therefore, what is important is that we need to reconfigure ourselves, and I think I've been discussing this. We need to reconfigure ourselves on the base of mosaic. We have to have basic tactical battle areas which have mosaic warfare and artificial intelligence, the digital application, all working on same configuration, talking to each other in a secure manner. Only put those mosaics together and you will find a beautiful integrated, not theater, but area of operation. Whichever you want to activate, the mosaic will put that together. So you don't have to say, this commander will write so-and-so's ACR. We've had some very basic problems. Our logistics were never integrated. Our training was never integrated. In fact, I was a chairperson to integrate many training organizations, and after Shekhatkar's committee report came up, we realized that we are very different than each other. We may look the same, but we are not actually. We are configured very differently. So even to have brought the training together was a very big problem for us. So I think we need to work on number of blocks, and I think technology will dictate how we fight together, and therefore we need to write our doctrines and strategies first before we start experimenting and changing things on ground, rather than having how many 3 stars and how many 4 stars will come up. I think that is what the bureaucracy is not going to allow, because I think the complete debate of war fighting goes into the equivalence with civilian and equivalence between 3 services and how many stars and how many flags will be there. I think we just need to put all that away and decide how we got to integrate and fight rather than how to theaterize and fight. Theaterization will be outcome over a period of time or not, I'm not too sure.
Thank you, sir. You've covered a huge thing and raised very pertinent issues. Yeah, VK.
Jagat, what I was saying is just to make one point taking off from where sir has said. The integration is not only between Army, Navy, Air Force. There's a big need for integration between MHA and MOD also.
So that's what I covered. The Kargil Review Committee talked about that.
They said it. But like sir talked about paramilitary forces, exactly how much ITBP, how much CRPF, how much Assam Rifles, how much BSF, what is the quantification, where will they come under command, what is their training? You know, there is so many question marks in all this.
No.
And I will say one thing even more, which is even more pertinent and more important. That is the intelligence agencies. Yes. Why did Kargil fail, or why did
he
Kargil
talked about ISR.
He said that didn't happen. I am trying to talk about.
Yeah, you created DGDI.
I am trying to say that the integration is not there even now. So your IB, your RNAW, if we are talking about theaterization and jointness and integration, I think all these agencies should also be integrated.
Yeah.
They should be reporting to the theater commander rather than anywhere else.
Absolutely.
So that lateral flow of information is going to make a very big difference.
But you know,
the other thing I was saying is that since we have to cover this and we are now into the last 15 or 20 minutes.
We got half an hour, so I'll
So-
quickly. We got
Just
more.
one point on this whole, this integration thing which he mentioned. We've all talked of theaterization and jointmanship and all being the sort of biggest military reforms since independence. But why are we restricting it only to the military? How many people have said, how is the MOD being reformed? It is never mentioned. When China went to theater command, they restructured the entire Central Military Commission. It didn't happen just picked up a few generals and made a few theater command. The US, the complete Pentagon was restructured. But we are not looking at that at all. So the DefSec or the Secretary DB, they are still sitting with their little empires. Nobody's questioning them that, okay, what are you giving up for the larger integration of a theaterization, jointmanship, integration, nothing. So why are we not insisting that the entire defense, higher defense organization needs to be restructured?
We need to
not just the military
strengthen
commands.
the apex
We
and,
need to
and
strengthen
not
the
talk
apex.
about strengthening the baseline.
There it finally comes down to petty things. Yes. I remember you mentioned about the bureaucratic thing. I was in naval plans at that time. The moment we started talking of CDS, the defense secretary said I should be called principal defense secretary.
No,
Why it got hit was because when the moment he said that, Home Secretary said I should be principal Home Secretary, principal Foreign Secretary, so that sort of went on to this thing. But had he had his way, he would have called himself a principal defense secretary just to show his, status above a service chief or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So I think we have to be very, very mindful of not allowing these very pedestrian things to distort the larger picture.
Like you said, civilian bureaucracy, our biggest challenge for civilian bureaucracy is your defense accounts, your CDA, So you're talking of going future, but these procedures are such that you're held at the past.
When my pension doesn't come, I really don't know who to talk to.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Because my network doesn't work.
Sparsh is a classic example.
So therefore, the question is that before we take over or prepare ourselves for adversaries like China or Pakistan or anyone else, and we talk about wars or theaterization, our biggest war, which is already happening and has been happening for years under our own eyes and noses, is the turf wars. And when you're talking about integration of all the forces, it's the turf war, I think. Each one or what
So
AJ is talking about, I should be principal defense secretary or principal home secretary. That is endemic to the Indian system, whether it's governance
True.
or it's army or it's anything else. So any idea on more and more as we're moving on, defense is becoming more and more critical. Everything else should be secondary.
exactly. So that's
If you are
why
not able to guard your own country or secure your own country, what are we talking about anything else for? So I think the need of the hour somewhere, because you all have so much of political influence also, how to impress the planners that leave the defense forces out of turf wars, and we need to just integrate ourselves on all these fronts.
Okay.
Maybe
when the United
influential group,
okay.
influencing group, influencer group.
Yeah.
There will be no
When the United States, in 1986,
86, Nichols Goldwater.
Goldwater Nichols brought in this act. Incidentally, those two senators were very well qualified to take on this job. They knew more about the defense forces than the defense forces knew about themselves.
Yeah.
So here, that is one thing lacking. We don't find that kind of level of education at the political and bureaucratic level about the armed forces. It is definitely a lacking part. So who is to bring this together? Whenever, say, the three services or any more components want to come together, there will be always biases. Suppose, I'm not saying current CDS or something, but if you are from a particular service, you carry those biases with you. The particular gentleman may not, but it is institutionally that is likely to happen. So there has to be an external person or an external body sitting above to enable this theaterization or integration, is the word.
It's integration.
Theaterization is a
Byproduct of that.
Is a byproduct of that. So when they made out this thing, the first thing they looked at was a chain of command. President to the Secretary of Defense, and the Secretary of Defense talks to the theater commander directly. They made this chain. and the chairman, chief of staff is not there. He's not doesn't have an operational
Yes.
role there. So this structural part has to be done. I'll just take 1 minute. I'm a student of lean management. When you do anything lean, you suppose there's a factory which is not performing well, or you go anywhere. What that expert who comes here, he says, clear the bloody table. Yeah. Tell me what all resource you have and what all you want to achieve. Resource and what is your target.
Absolutely.
Now he says, old paradigms, itne generals, itne air marshals, ye structures, wo structure, he says, that's all crap. Let me have a fresh look, and he creates fresh structures, the big ones. And thereafter is the fine tuning of the smaller part. But till the last thing in the chain is not there, they don't implement it. Because we say, shuru to kare yaar. Ek to
This
kare.
point is very valid.
Very
Is
valid point.
Very
It
valid.
is, you should never do. I have brought a list, by the way. I've been working on this subject for many years. This is a questionnaire that these are the 25 things which need to be in place before anyone says go.
Excellent. The conditions to be met.
Conditions to be met
Correct.
for implementing this. And it's a huge, and that work has to be done. But it has to be led by someone who sits on top and is knowledgeable enough to take these calls.
Can I add one point to the list, which
Yeah.
I'm sure is
He wants to talk
prepared,
again.
because I was thinking
Just
that
tell
the
Jagat.
conditions to be met are very important.
Yeah.
I think we are not United States, we are not China.
Yeah, no.
We are India, we have our own problems, we have our own adversaries, and we are what we are. We can't really copy paste the American model onto us.
No.
They don't have similar problems as we do. We cannot copy paste the Chinese model onto us. Unfortunately, we bring examples from here and there.
We can learn lessons from
We
them.
can
that's
learn
all.
lessons, but at the end of
But
the, end
no
of the
country-
day,
It has to be our model.
America is not going to lose land in experimentation.
No.
But they may not be successful in gaining anything which they have experimented on many times.
That's
so. But we can lose that.
Absolutely. sir.
I
Thank
think,
you,
I think
sir.
the fundamental thing
Sir,
of
what-
theaterization, if I may just add one line, is that you're right, we shouldn't follow any model. But do we really then need theaterization? That's the fundamental question. Are we just doing it because it's a fashionable thing to do?
Yes.
So,
That's another question.
before we go further, General Rajeshwar, sir, your opinion, sir, you've been listening in and you wanting to say something, so can we have your views on this, sir? And how do you feel the theatre commander should look, at what level should he look? And also, can you tell us something about the PLA and the US2 models which are there, and what steps are Pakistan taking, sir?
But sir, keep your laptop closer to you, because last time we couldn't hear you too clearly.
Okay, I'm actually on a. You can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Right. No, I am on earpods. That's why it is like this. But
Okay.
the models are different. US and UK models are totally different. Okay, and Australian model is different. So is the Chinese model. I fully agree. We have to devise our own model. Right? Okay. Now the fundamental thing is, who will you put as an operational commander? That is the first point. Second, if it is the CDS, the earlier CISC used to do all the acquisition, procurement, striation, brief the Raksha Mantri, and then go ahead. Today the CDS is doing it. Okay. So is one CISC enough, or should we have a VCDS? My answer is there has to be a VCDS who should look at the operational issue, which is in the UK model. It is the VCDS who does complete operations. The CDS is part of a committee of the Defense Secretary, and vice versa. Defense Secretary is also part of the other committee. But the VCDS handles the operation. In our case, it could be the CDS oversight, along with the Chief of Staff's committee.
One minute, sir. The CDS currently wears 3 hats, sir. Chairman, Chief of Staff Committee, CDS, and Secretary DMA. So, which part do you think he needs to shed, and how should he get about it?
Yeah. So my understanding is that he will continue to be the principal military advisor since he's the CDS. You cannot take it away. That means he's going to be called every time, and there is nothing which stops the political masters to call the particular service chief as well. Okay, whether it is land, air, or maritime. Fine. So there is no conflict with that. Secretary DMA is something that has been put on him, which we were thinking would come to the CISC. If that is not reconciled, then this is more in the realm of who does the secretary thing. To my mind, his load should be lightened. Okay, it should be lightened, and therefore it should roll down to CISC. But he should have an oversight as far as the services are concerned, because even in acquisition, what should happen is he should, because Secretary DMA does a lot of structuring and restructuring. It's a very flat model where a JS is involved and AS is involved and the secretary is involved. Okay, so that is for military affairs. So some kind of fundamental reformulation of his AOB and TOB, which is, the transaction of business rules and whatever's allocation, that can be reworked. But I think he has to be lessened, because he'll have operational responsibility at the apex level where he can brief people. So you can cut it by giving it to the CISC. So now he wears two hats. Okay. If that is the case, what is the main issue is, it should not be construed that it is headquarter IDS and the CDS who is carving this out. All the three services must take ownership that this is a joint solution. It is not it is going to go against my service or the other service or whichever service. That is the only answer to this, that all three must take ownership that yes, it was a joint solution. Otherwise, it will fall a cropper that my service is not getting A, B, C. Should there be an oversight? People who are experienced, there should be an advisory team to not only the CDS, but to the, Raksha Mantri to see how this comes into play. Okay. Another thing is, the role of SFC is different, and I think we should leave it out in jointmanship. It is a separate thing. I worked there, so it works differently. Whereas headquarter IDS and, Andamans, I see no problem in all three services, including Coast Guard. We have had a wonderful time working together. So it is who holds the baton, right? He decides very clearly. But he is also cognizant of service cultures and how they will tick. So I don't see it. It's not something that will come crashing down. Okay. CNCs, the structure of CNCs should be retained. Why? Because CNC is actually an operational commander. He could be under the theater commander, right? The theater commander has got force allocated to him. So he's one who can apportion within these sub-theaters, or if you want to recall them, let's say the Army Eastern Command and the Army Northern Command, or whatever you want to do, that the Northern Theater Commander can decide. Similarly for Western, right? And similarly for Maritime. Because a lot of our actual force application is through theaters. And nobody has the time, either in Delhi or anywhere else, to fight theater battles. It can only be planned at that level. Okay. Acquisition. Acquisition is a major thing where the service chiefs come in. So I would feel that is their role, that the theater commander can give inputs, but what platform, how to get it, that I think will get a boost when the service chiefs see this, recruitment, training, and sustainability issues. So acquisition will get a boost in a acquisition committee. Okay. Now the next thing is, to my mind, the theater commanders should be 4-star, because there is a requirement of being able to outrank the sub-theater commanders who are CNCs, okay? And to be able to give very specific directions. And the CDS then, although he's a 4-star, the CDS still calls the shots since he's sitting in Delhi with the Chief of Staff's committee. Okay, so he gives the advisory, and the reserves that he holds with him and the VCDS will be able to affect the theater commanders. So that is the role I see that can happen. This will also help prioritization of capability development. And it will give enough roles to play for everyone. This will leaner organizations for theaters, will help them focus on how to prosecute the operational strand of warfare. Like what General Pannu said, all that can kick in into it. Yes, there are other organizational challenges. I think, one of the main things is we should get our house in the military in order and not only, look at the bureaucracy doing it. I fully understand integration is it's a whole of government approach.
That's what Vice Chancellor Sinha also said. You need a whole government approach.
Yes, so it will happen, but we have to get our things done. We have already got so much, and we should be able to fight wars better. The Kargil Review Committee clearly pointed out that we were found, wanting. And now I think we have to go forward. We shouldn't wait that everything will fall into place. I think it's a pipe dream that things fall into place. They never happen. There is an enemy on the other side. You have to deal with him and you have to make plans for it. All that can happen only if we quickly get into some shape. Of course, General Pannu has already given space, cyber, and the border. I think all of them are very, very important. I think so. That's what I would feel is the way to go ahead. Have a joint doctrine, which is the most important thing, so that training can take place, operations can take place. Make out your national defense strategy. I know national security strategy is, it will happen when it happens. I think we should, keep worrying about it, but we should have strategy. So the Raksha Mantri's operational directive is crystal clear to warfighting commanders. And that is, what are you doing by theaterization? You are increasing the operational efficiency in warfare. This is your aim. You are wanting to make it more and more scientific so that, it can be warfare can be prosecuted. So I think there is a lot to be done. Thank you, and I'll end.
Thank you very much, sir. I mean, this has been wonderful. Air Marshal Kapoor, sir, can we have your comments on this, sir? We've had a major discussion on this. So.
I agree with General Rajeshwar. The fundamental thing, having commanded the National Defence Academy and the other training academies, is the joint thinking from the beginning. I think so, barring NDA, the officers coming directly have absolutely or little or no knowledge about the other services. To compound is the short service period, wherein he is spending most of the time doing his own service specific things rather than knowing about the other services. Last 20 years, the Andaman Nicobar Command, which has been made into a concept of theaterization, has actually not taken off the way it was conceived. Similarly, if you hurriedly put through a theatre replicating what we have done in other forms at Andaman Nicobar, there is no guarantee that it will suffice.
No guarantee?
That it will work the way it is envisaged. The services have not been able to get a common communication line together over which our common telephone, IT and other bands run. We have not been able to integrate our identity cards for last 30 years. We have not been able to work wherein in Andaman Nicobar there are 3 Dornier operating services, that is the Air Force, Navy and the Coast Guard, but there is no interface between them. The Army, Navy and the Air Force works and flies Cheetah and Chetak helicopters, but there are no common SOPs. So I feel before we take the bigger plunge, let's set a timeline wherein these issues which are specific to the three services are tested out, tried, and cross postings, which is merely a ritual today, I feel, should be actually done. Having been in all the tri-services courses, I find the inter-service knowledge about the other services, especially of the officers who have not come through NDA or other means, is quite low. So there is a need to make a person understand the positives, the limitations, and the other aspects of the other two services. That's my.
Thank you very much, sir. Yeah.
I just have a question, more a layman question. Lot of our speakers today mentioned some kind of challenges where we find that whether in the sea or in the China border, we have some limitations as opposed to our adversaries. If there is this huge talk going on right now about the Quad between Japan, Australia, US and India, is that a system which, or an alliance which at the moment we have been saying is not military, it's more economic? Can that help us reduce our deficiency and make us more able to face the challenge?
I think from the Quad, as you mentioned, takes pains to establish that it's not a military construct. But underlining, we know why the Quad was created in the first place. Right. So there's no two ways about it. It's about a free and open Indo-Pacific, which means it's against a particular person who's trying to change the international rules-based order to one of its own characteristics. I think what the important thing about the Quad is that it may not have any military overtone, but Malabar exercise now has reached a stage where it is a fairly military exercise with all the four navies participating, notwithstanding China's objections, China screaming, shouting all about it, but they do it. And the level of exercise has been going up in scale and scope with every passing year. Of course, they do things like boarding and non-traditional threats, but they also look at the warfighting element, anti-submarine warfare, participation of submarines. More than the Quad will never become a military alliance. India will not be a military alliance. I mean, today, it's not that India is going to go and fight for the US against, or Taiwan in the South China Sea against the Chinese. What can it do? It can contain, or it can offer leverage to ensure that that particular foe is contained where it is fighting, without having a direct role to play. And that is where I think when things like Quad are concerned, interoperability of equipment. We operate the P8I, the Americans operate the P8, the Japanese operate the P3. There's a lot of commonality between the communication protocols, we've got these foundational agreements. And more than what the Quad is achieving as a four-nation thing is it has led to a lot of bilaterals and trilaterals which have become very strong. 2+ to Australia, 2+ to Japan, 2+ to US. These were never there in the first place. Quad has been the sort of bottom line. And now I think the most important thing that has come up in Quad officially is that they actually have a joint working group on maritime security and maritime domain awareness. They call it the Indo-Pacific MDA, IPMDA. So these are very, very visible manifestations of Quad's concern with security, because security underpins everything today. It's non-traditional, traditional, everything. Yeah. But I think the Quad nations, without being Quad as such, can support each other's interoperability to a very large extent and are doing it at the moment. Malabar, etc., all about that only, proving that.
It's a pressure point which is being created against a certain country. But you can't say that I can throttle back on my capability on the basis of Quad.
No, but till such time that we can become a little stronger and catch up with the missed bus.
Because there is no commitment there. There is no military commitment there.
No, they may give you some aid, they may give you things like that, but they're not going to come and fight your war for you. That's not going to be any
you fight alone, basically.
You fight alone. Undoubtedly, you fight alone.
What do you say, General?
I think Quad is for the Indo-Pacific. And without India, there is no Indo-Pacific happening, and therefore they need India in it.
Yes.
Second thing is, I think India is also a front line to China, which is emerging as a threat to all the Quad members, in which I think India in proximity is the nearest. So therefore, if anything has to happen, it is India which is going to actually face the first brunt. Now, whether
On the
other
land.
Quad members come to support us or not, time will tell. And if not, then I suppose the responsibility weighs very heavily on India to accept how they want to function in Quad, and therefore we are talking about its non-military because we do not actually feel that we are going to change our relationship with the US from the buyer-seller relationship to anything more serious. Second thing is, it all depends on China's behavior. If the China threatens more, Quad will become more tighter and more functional. If the China tones down, I think Quad will also descend. So I think it's all about the cause and effect.
Can I just raise one issue about the Maritime Theatre
Yeah,
Command? And
yeah.
I'd like Admiral Sinha's views on that.
Yeah,
We've
we'll ask
discussed
Admiral
it.
Sinha, sir. Like we are about to close up now. So, please.
We are setting up a Maritime Theatre Command. We already have two maritime commands, the Western Naval Command and the East Naval Command. We are looking at the entire Indian Ocean as our primary area of responsibility. We look at the Pacific as our secondary area of responsibility. We look at the Red Sea as a secondary area of responsibility. But the way the whole maritime security dynamic is working, they're all getting interconnected. Lines are blurring between these contiguous bodies. Is one Maritime Theatre Command adequate to look at this huge geographical spread?
No, but you are not doing away with WNC.
That doesn't matter. But the Maritime Theatre Commander is going to be one. They're going to be reporting to him. The Americans have three: AFRICOM, CENTCOM, and PACOM, looking after the same geographical spread. And we'll do it with one. So why don't we continue having? Why don't we make it a Western Theatre Command and Eastern Theatre Command? Why are we looking at one single Maritime Theatre Command?
Admiral Sinha, sir, can we have your comments on this, sir?
What Commodore AJ is saying, this has also been one of the suggestions. But what I believe now, speaking to the previous Chief of Naval Staff, that the Maritime Theatre Commander will be the overall commander of what is happening in the Indian Ocean. However, the Western Naval Command and Eastern Naval Command will continue to function the way they are functioning. And overarching, because we are going to theaterize, but AJ has got a point that why not call it a Western Theatre Command and a Eastern Maritime Theatre Command? That makes sense because of but probably they don't want to create two theaters, have two more commanders in chief, super commander in chief. So I think that to begin with is not a bad idea. That's number one. Coming back to the point actually Naveenji mentioned was how is the Quad helpful?
Absolutely, sir.
So I have 2 points. You are absolutely right. The Quad is already in a manner. There have been a lot of bilateral and minilateral agreements by which the technology transfer is being done to India, and the private industries have jumped in. Whereas there are areas where the manufacturing of India is going to increase, and that is falling into that Atmanirbhar. It has been given a little bit of shall I say, a civil sort of usage facade. But actually speaking, it is all going to be, most of it is going to be startup, which is a dual use, which will also be used in the armed forces. For example, there are a lot of things in the space sector which is happening, a lot of things which are happening in the cyber sector. And if you say that will Quad ever become a military alliance, only today the decision has been taken that there will be coast guards of the four will come together and they will be doing joint patrol. So we are moving in the direction. I think that it is a Coast Guard. When you say Coast Guard, you're trying to show that it is mainly to enforce the laws of the sea, civil laws. We're not actually to combat, which is right way to start. In fact, that is one of the ways to start the, your going into the Pacific, South China Sea, along with the other three, and start using these, because the IMO, the International Maritime Organization laws, actually permit you this. That if you want to protect the safe and timely arrival of public goods, that is the sentence they use. I think AJ probably will know, correct me if I'm wrong. It's called the safe and timely arrival of public goods. Now, if it is public goods timely arrival, to ensuring safety, the Coast Guard is very much empowered to do that. And that is what can take you to South China Sea or part of the Pacific. Okay, it's a different issue. There was a time, in this forum probably I can speak, there was a time when we were almost through to, doing similar thing with the Taiwanese trade that was going on. It's only about $8-9 billion now. There was intention to increase it to $20 billion, which will happen. Except there are problems. Again, problems are on our side, not on their side. There are 100 problems in that. Our bureaucracy, our governments, I don't know what what all can I say? There's so much to say about this. But the fact is that it has already started. As you also mentioned about the Indo-Pacific Maritime Domain Awareness Network. Now, $5 billion have been committed by the US to link up the satellites which are being used by these individual parts of the Quad, for the maritime domain awareness. And they will be linked. Now you will have one data wall where you can see the entire Indo-Pacific on one wall. And then you can select, if you go to the page that you want, and then you can select the particular sector. All that is going to happen is a 5-year time frame. But the point is, I have written some articles on this, that nothing stops the Quad countries in using this data not only to find which fishing vessel is, violating the rule, but which warship is where. You can have a channel. Where there is only gray shipping data, which is a classified one. And then on that we can exchange information, which can happen even in the present MDA which we have in Manesar. It's possible. Though there are 28, 29 countries are party to all this at the moment, the open domain, and they're doing a very good job. Publishing data, publishing reports every probably quarter or a month. So I think that it's a good beginning. Coming back to where it can help in war, Naveenji, you are right. The intelligence sharing of classified intelligence amongst these 4 countries, individually each country has already signed that agreement, what is called the 2+2, if you like. Now that is given a little bit of overarching civilian umbrella that it is government to government. But actually speaking, if you read the finer point, the intelligence given by the Americans to the Indians during the Galwan conflict was nearly 24/7, right? So that you could tell you that where is the troop movement, where should you move your troops, that gives you some idea. Obviously, there'll be no boots on the ground, but intelligence sharing is a big thing we have now with Japan and with Australia. So all our data of the ships of the Chinese warships which are heading into the Pacific and our own maritime domain awareness in the Indian Ocean is very robust. It's a very robust system. We can communicate with everybody in this whole area of Indian Ocean. You can pick up your telephone from your office and you can give a call to a ship at sea. So it's a big change. It is happening. And it is happening because of this Quad alliance, 2+2 alliance. So yes, you're right. It is helping in a way, but not very directly at the moment. But indirectly, there is a lot. But I personally feel, I may be completely wrong, but my suggestion whenever they've asked me, I have said it is time to declare that Quad countries, if they find that maritime laws are being violated, it can use the Malabar platform to enforce those laws. A lot of people don't agree, but my own personal view has been this. So, you can get another view. But
No, I think that's a wonderful view, sir. Yeah.
Okay. You had asked me earlier that why is the Air Force reluctant and what
Absolutely.
is the structure that,
Yeah.
we getting news of this structure that a Northern Command and a Western Command, Theatre Command would be there, right? And a Maritime.
One focused on China, one on Pakistan.
Okay. What is not visible is what the Air Force does. You look after the full air defense. You do counter air.
The earlier structure was Air Defense Command at Preparedness.
No, that itself, that's a separate topic. You do counter air, you do deep interdiction, you do air-to-air refueling support. There are many functions which are not visible. So, I have a suggestion that since the air is encompassing all these domains, we should have an air command which is not geographical. Okay, so that is a command like, I'll tell you, the Indigo Ops Center runs 2,000 sorties per day from one hall.
In
From
Gurgaon.
one hall in Gurgaon,
You must
2,000
see.
sorties, you got to see that. So the air command should, because of integrated, within air, you can't say, ye meri boundary thi, or you peel off from here, I will take on. This is all, because air you can't make geographical lines. So
In Gurgaon, he is watching the aircrafts landing Indonesia to landing in Tbilisi to landing in this thing as private airline.
So Air Command is the one which should run all the operations, and the theatre commander, what he wants is under command something. Okay, so out of the cake, you give
Allocation.
him some additional under command stuff.
No,
And if
I-
he wants more, the air command supplements him from somewhere else.
No, I must thank all the panelists. I mean, what wonderful points have come up today by all of you, and your depth of knowledge is something that we need to appreciate. But as they say, theaterization involves major, mental and structural changes, and we need to be undertaken in a manner that you don't upset the equilibrium as it's there today, because we are facing active adversaries on our active border, the adversaries. So how are we doing it at this time? So it's something there which is a challenge.
Transition has to be
Very well done. It has to be delicately done, and balance has to be retained throughout. You cannot be thrown off balance at any stage during this process. But as General Rajeshwar and Admiral Shekhar Sinha have clearly brought out, it's something that has to be done, but in what time frame and in what manner? And my question is, 4 years, is it enough or not? That's something. And last point, sir, General Rajeshwar, sir, your point, and then we'll close today's discussion, sir. Anything you'd like to say, sir?
No, thank you for holding the discussion. And just I wanted to add what Mr. Berry asked. Admiral Shekhar Sinha is very aptly covered that this, the interaction in Quad is already 3 strands. One is your engagement, which is happening, in the form of Malabar exercises. Maritime, the areas that we intend to cover are really vast. This is one. Second is, it also gives us a heft into the maritime domain awareness. And what stops it from actually it further, since the same satellites and data which is keyed in, help us even on land frontiers, which are much smaller compared to maritime. Then is the technological heft that we get. Because today, I think the world, you have seen Russia-Ukraine war, or, in the Middle East, I think geopolitical alignments are a big issue. Notwithstanding whatever happens, I think we need to be aware of the battle. So there is a huge impact of the Quad, whether you say it or not, even now, which is taking place. Should there be a flare-up, let us say in the Indo-Pacific, or a flare-up here against our adversaries, I'm sure that we will need a lot of ISR support. And that will come. Boots on ground, we don't require anybody's presence. And that is very clear. We are capable ourselves. But what definitely gives us a leg up is ISR, both electronically, digitally, communication-wise. Of course, like Air Marshal Hora, he pointed out that we need to have our own networks and all, which I think has already been understood, and we are working towards it. But I think this, these 4 our interactions with the other Quad countries, 2+2 is helping everything. We are much better off than we were almost 4 years back. So I think that is the way to look at it. And I'm very positive this will happen. The theaterization will happen, and it's you have to have simple solutions to these problems. You can't have complex solutions. With that, I end, and thank you for having me over, Jagatbir, Mr. Berry, and Terry.
Thank you very much,
Thank
sir,
you,
for
sir.
joining us, and very grateful to all the panelists this evening. Very incisive comments. I think very constructive suggestions have emerged. As the only non-specialist on this panel, I get 2 senses. One is that a lot of action needs to have been taken, not tomorrow or day after, but actually yesterday. And we have lost and losing time. So I think timing is very essential. We have no more time to lose. The second thought I had was the sense out of this discussion today. We have a government in position, and this government very fondly is talking about disruption. And I think very clearly we need some major disruption in how we are looking at the structure of the defense forces, as you mentioned. I think the time is right now that just put all of it back and say, what are my resources? What
That's
are
what
my
he said.
shortcomings? Yeah, I'm just quoting him. And I think that disruption is actually the need of the hour to just put new things on the drawing board and put them all together. And thank you very much once again, each one of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Vivek. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajeshwar sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Sinha sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for honoring our request. And it was a pleasure talking to you and hearing you and your views. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir.